Hello there, fellow truth seekers. This is Doug coming to you once again on this here Shabbat. Uh, I got a little thing here. I'm holding up this phone on here. It's too big to go on this holder, so I had to kind of rig up something to hold it on there, some wire. Just wanted to kind of come on here and uh, let y'all know I'm still here. But and I hadn't really been able to get on here. My stepson, my woman's son, he about 4 weeks ago now. Yeah, actually today's 4 weeks. He had a bad four-wheeler wreck on an ATV, and he suffered pretty bad head injuries. Had to be life flighted to a trauma center, and he had three brain bleeds, severe concussion, broke these bones in his face, broke his nose, and physically, he's better. He's out of the hospital now, but cognitively, he's got some issues. He's going to have to go through some therapy and stuff, and my woman, she spent over 2 weeks down there in a chair, sleeping there, in his room. So I was pretty much having to hold down everything here, and just couldn't get to the time to do it. And so I figured I better, try and at least get on here and let people know I'm still here, and kind of what the situation has been. We're kind of getting back into a little normalcy now, but it's still going to take a little bit, because, when something like that happens, it just kind of throws everything off, and it takes a little while to get back into sort of a normal routine. And so that's kind of where we're at. I didn't really prepare any kind of a study today. I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the current events that are going on. And me and I have a brother that's a subscriber of Hitless Gaming. Me and him talk on the phone every now and again, and just kind of do a little brainstorming, you might say, over things. And we were talking about it. One thing is that we're living in an age where misinformation and disinformation and what you see, you really can't trust it to be the truth. And we both come to the conclusion that, that the time of great trouble, such as the world never seen before up to that time, nor ever again, we think that's already passed. The Great Tribulation period, in which the Hebrew nation was destroyed. The temple was destroyed, Jerusalem was destroyed, that whole system was destroyed because they rejected their Messiah. And of course, if you look at the commentary of the disciples and of Yahushua when he was talking to them in Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, you can see the sense of urgency that and he's, he says he's coming quickly. If you think 2,000 years or whatever period of time it's been since then is quickly, that's not quickly. Quickly means like quickly, now. And what he told them, that some of them would live to see his return. And he also told Caiaphas and I think it was Ananias, the priests, he told them that they would live to see him sitting at the right hand of power. I mean, when the sky opened up, when the firmament opened up and they saw him sitting there beside the power, the right hand of power, the ultimate power, they saw it, and then they were destroyed. And when you know, I never really, I kind of noticed it, but I didn't really give it much thought. These, you know, when you're looking at a flat map of the earth, you can see this band all the way across of just, you know, desertification. But when you know, really begin to dig into it and look at it more closely, you see that it is destruction. It's not a normally occurring, you know, erosion and changes in weather patterns. No, this was some kind of incredible destruction. And what we're seeing now, and we kind of both agreed on this, that if we're in the little season of Hasatan, his final hurrah, if you will, then basically, I mean, there's not a lot said about that, period. I mean, we do see, if you look at Ezekiel 38, the Gog and Magog war, that is talking about that time, that period of time. You know, a lot of people try to equate Ezekiel 38, the Gog and Magog war, with the tribulation, and it's not. It's a separate event. It's the event at the end, because if you go to Revelation 20, it says that Gog and Magog goes out to gather the armies of the world together to go up against the camp of the saints and the holy city. And it ain't talking about Jerusalem. And because that's not the camp of the saints. The saints are the ones who were in the first go around, the tribulation period. Paul and the disciples, those are the saints. And the 144,000 that were gathered from around the world, from the 12 tribes, they were gathered from all over. Because the Roman Empire was worldwide. And the archaeological and the architectural evidence of it is everywhere. But we were blinded. We were deceived. And, you know, the mainstream intelligentsia and academia all have been going along with this lie and perpetrating it. But it's coming out now. I mean, it's just like today I was watching a video, and it was, you know, about what they have been telling us about atoms, you know, and protons and neutrons and electrons and all that stuff isn't so. They're nothing like what we believe they are. And that really they're coming to the conclusion that we are in a simulation. And I've been saying the same thing, that this is a simulation, that this is not the true reality. We're spiritual beings. Okay, that's our true nature. This is a image of us. This is a physical projection of the spiritual us. And so after the millennial kingdom ended and Hasatan was released for his little season, basically the Father and Yahushua have basically just, they're standing back and they're just watching. And the Ruach is moving in the world, speaking to people. But most people are too distracted. You know, that's why they have gone all out to create every kind of distraction that they can, so that you're not paying attention, that you're not listening to that still small voice. He's not going to shout at you. He's going to just whisper to you. But you have to be listening for it. And you have to acknowledge it. and seek the truth. The truth is in the creation itself. The creation declares the glory of the Creator. And so, we have to, and so he's expecting people to be listening. But they're being so bombarded with entertainment, with Hollywood, with music, with YouTube, with TikTok, with all of these different things. And then not to mention the fact that we are being bombarded constantly with energy. They're bombarding us with energy. And that is affecting us, affecting our minds, affecting our physiology, this physical simulation. And all the more why they want to, I keep, like on my cell phone, on my computer, they keep trying to get me to put my stuff on the cloud. They keep trying to get me to do the facial recognition stuff instead of having a password. They just keep being, more insistent. And it's because they want to ultimately, and I've talked about this, and it's not my opinion, it's not me making this up. I mean, you can listen to the intelligentsia, the so-called intellects, the people like Yuval Noah Harari at the World Economic Forum and these professors over there at Oxford that are all about transhumanism. They're wanting to take and put our minds on the cloud. They want to use like Neuralink or something like it to set up a two-way communication between our mind and this cloud computing stuff. And and then when you listen to people like Larry Ellison, Oracle Software, and all you got to do, I'm not going to come out and just start talking about it, but all you got to do is look up who these people are, what group of people they are. The ones who say that they are Jews but are not. They are the synagogue of Satan. And they are, but just about every one of these companies that are tech giants, Google, Meta, with a few exceptions, are all ran by these people. The banking system, the international banking cartel, all of it. Big corporations, the venture capital firms, all of them. And they're in the political system too. And so these people, they want to have absolute control over us. And as I've said before, I think is to try to create an army that is incapable of not going along. And you could call it a mark of the beast or whatever if you want to, having a chip implanted in your head or whatever. But personally, I think the mark of the beast has always been Sunday worship. Is one of the symbols of that. That's the worship of the sun god. And it tells us in Scripture that His seal and His sign to us and upon us is that we keep His Sabbath. That's sort of, and that goes all the way back to the very beginning. It's not something that just come with the Ten Commandments. It's always been. And so, and people were expected back then, before the flood, Noah and before Noah, back to Adam. They were expected to keep this day. And so, that is going to, even though some of these people, they keep it, but it's all part of their deception. They're the controllers, the ones who are in league with Hasatan. And of course our military and all, our government, the part of our government that's always there despite elections or selections, those people are in league with Hasatan. The fallen ones. They promised them advanced technology, just like they did before the flood. I mean, if you read the book of Enoch, that's what they were doing. They were giving them all this technology, teaching them to do all kinds of stuff, even to the point where they were using genetics to create chimeras and stuff. And now, again, can you believe anything that you see on YouTube or anything like that? I mean, unless you have the ability to personally go and verify it, you don't. I mean, you really don't. And now with AI and deep fakes and all that stuff, I mean, they can make up anything they want. In Project Bluebeam, they can make stuff appear in the sky and everywhere else. So, basically we each as an individual are going to have to listen. That's why Yahushua told me, keep your eyes on me. Focus on me. I will lead you to the truth. And you can do nothing else, because we are in a time where deception is rampant. I mean, it's just like with this assassination of Charlie Kirk. Did that really happen? Did it really happen? I mean, I believe it did. But again, I mean, with mass communications like we have, I mean, unless you are there and see it with your own eyes, I mean, can you say 100% that it is true? I mean, there's an old saying, don't believe anything you hear and half of what you see. And so now I'd say it's more like, don't believe anything you hear and probably just a few % of what you see. I mean, we're in a whole new paradigm where the deception is just gone off the charts. And so, I mean, unless you have a source of information that has been absolutely correct and truthful at all times, then you really can't depend on any source for the truth. I mean, even if they are sincerely trying to give you the truth, because everything can be altered, everything can be changed, everything can be made, they can impersonate you. And so, I think we're in a time where it's up to the individual. And religion is no different. Religion has been probably the biggest purveyor of deception of all. And so that's why I pretty much, have sworn off anything that is called religion. I don't even, even the title Christian. I just say I'm of the way. And, I don't take on these titles because it has been so corrupted, that I don't want to be affiliated with these deceiving Christian churches. and Protestants. Any of them, any religion. Because as I've said all along, it is not a religion. It's a way of life. It's a way of living in harmony with His universal laws. The way of peace. That's why there cannot ever be any peace, any lasting peace, is because we're not living the ways of peace. Yahushua made it clear that the only way to peace, lasting peace, is the law of love. Loving the Father with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. Unless you do that, you can never truly have peace. And the problem with people is a lot of it is envy and covetousness. Always wanting what somebody else has. And envying them because you can't have it. We have to be like Paul said. We have to learn to live in every situation contentedly. We have to be content. He says, I have learned with whatever situation I am in, therein to be content. Whether he was in prison, whether he was stranded, whether he was out in the wilderness, whatever condition he was in. Whether he was hungry or whether he was fed, whether he was warm, whether he was cold, he learned contentment. And that's the problem is that people are not contented because they're looking in the wrong place for contentment. And of course, the media harps, the lifestyle of rich and famous, and they blast that in your face all the time. And so people begin to envy them and, to covet what they have, and they begin to want that, and they go in debt to try and have those things. And they become a slave. You become a slave whenever you're indebted. You're enslaved to the person who that holds the debt. And and if you in truth, if we were walking in His ways as we should. One, we would be contented with whatever we had. We would be contented with that. We wouldn't always be wanting more and more and more and more. And we would work for the things that we want and pay for them. But now that with the pretty much the destruction of the fiat currency to the point to where it's almost worthless, the buying power of it is because of inflation, and inflation is expansion of the money supply, which leads to price increases. That's what inflation is. It's the expansion of the money supply, and it dilutes it. The more you have of something, the less it's worth. I mean, it's just, supply side economics. I mean, if you have a lot of something, it's not going to be worth very much. But if you only have a little bit of it, it's going to be worth a lot. I mean, look at precious metals like gold and silver. Relative to other metals. Metals that there is an abundance of it, like iron and aluminum and stuff. That's cheap because there's an abundance of it. But there isn't an abundance of gold and silver. It's actually pretty rare when you consider the mass of the earth. And It's the same with the fiat money. And of course, it's all smoke. It's not really backed up by anything other than a promissory that is on us. You know, it was transferred to us from the governments of the United States. You know, originally in the original Constitution, the debt was carried by the state, or by the feds, and by the states. They were responsible for the debt. But under Roosevelt in 1931, we're basically like cattle. We can be bought and sold. We're responsible for that debt. And if you look at a birth certificate, because the birth certificates as we know them, you know, before that, your name was written in a family Bible or something, and that was where the record of your birth and all was at, and your death usually. Then they came out with these birth certificates, and they are exactly like articles of incorporation. And it's all in capital letters. Your name and everything's all in caps. So you are a corporation. Most people really don't get that. Everything is. The United States government, this government, is the United States of America Incorporated. Now there is the Republic of the United States also. But the government itself is a corporation. This government here. Same with the states. They're all incorporated too. Don't take my word for it. You can look this stuff up. It's not hidden. I mean, they do keep it kind of, you know, low key. They don't want people knowing it. But they're all incorporated. And everything is. And so, you know, and it goes back to the very beginning of this nation. Other than us being property, but that, you know, that became the law of the land in I think it was 1931 when they began to require birth certificates and Social Security cards and all that kind of stuff. That was, you know, I mean, as far as Social Security, they never intended on anybody drawing any Social Security, because at that time, I think the average lifespan of a man was maybe 45, 50 years old. And so they set the Social Security, you know, your age to draw Social Security retirement at 65. And they didn't figure anybody would ever live long enough to collect it, or very few would. In fact, the first person to collect it was a woman, off of her husband, when she reached 65. And so, you know, but then as people, you know, as you get more and more food, it all ties to food. The more food you have available, the better quality of food you have available, the longer you're going to live. I mean, as a kind of a rule, you're going to be healthier and you're going to live longer. And at that period of time in there, we were beginning to produce a lot of food. We had a lot of food available, a lot of beef available, a lot of meat, you know, and all, which is helpful. And so people began to live a lot longer. And then, of course, now, you know, then in the 60s, they began to adulterate all the food. They realized that they had made a mistake. You know, that they made a mistake, you know, and of course during certain periods like World War II and stuff like that, they wanted healthy young men that they could send off to kill. And then after that, well, then they really, you know, and probably they had, you know, the baby boom after World War II. And they realized, man, we got to do something to control this, you know. And so what do they start doing? They start processing all the food, making it convenient. You know, you just go grab a TV dinner and throw it in the microwave or in the oven. Back then it was in the oven. They didn't have microwaves. I think it was in the 70s when the microwaves came out. Manna came out with the radar range or something like that. Anyway, the late 70s, somewhere along in there. And so, you know, everything began to be packaged and processed. And they figured, well, this will be the way that we can begin to reduce people's lifespans. Poor quality of food, not nutritious. And as time gone on, it's to where it is right now. I mean, most of this generation coming out now, and even the generation before, I guess it's Generation X or whatever, they don't know how to cook. I mean, they don't know how to, you know, sit down and prepare a meal, you know, I mean, from scratch. Not many of them. I mean, I'm sure there's some, you know, that probably aspire to be chefs or something like that, you know, that like cooking. Yeah. But in general, no. And of course, it's convenience. And, you know, and it's bred laziness. And then like this around this Charlie Kirk stuff, if, you know, and like I said, I do believe he did get assassinated. Because it was a large venue, there was a lot of people there, so, you know, you got those people coming out, yeah, we saw it, and his wife was there, and she saw it, and his kids, which is horrific. And these people, these radical socialists, and they mostly all ones that have been to universities, they were celebrating it. You know, and the transgenders and the you know, pro-abortionist and the you know, the LGBTQ community and all that kind of stuff, all celebrating that, and the intelligentsia, the college people, you know, the professors and school teachers, because the school system in this country has become a Marxist ideological indoctrination center. They're not teaching our kids anything. They're brainwashing them. That's why I do not send your kids to these colleges. You know, if you're going to go to one, go to a good classical education, you know, Christian-based school. At the very least, you're going to get a real education. But there, you know, if you listen to, you know, these people, I mean, and Charlie Kirk himself interviewing these, you know, trying to reach these young people through reason. You see, they have attacked their ability to reason. And so when he would say, well, you know, why is it that you think I'm, you know, what have I done or said that makes you believe that I'm a fascist? And they couldn't say. They just, you're a fascist, you know. But they can't tell you why they believe that. It's just been being ingrained in them. And they think because they're going to university, these people at these universities, oh, they're the smart people. They, you know, they know everything. So if they say it, it's got to be true. And of course, I've talked about that, how these controllers, that would, you know, and when I talked about, you know, if I was Hasatan, what would I do when I was released? You know, what would I, well, education would be one of the first things you got to go after. But you can't just be blatantly obvious about it. You got to just kind of ease into it. You know, because people that are educated would begin to, you know, actually see what you're doing and they'd shut you down. But if it just kind of slides in real insidiously, real smooth in, then you don't know it. You don't see it. And of course, you the educators who began to implement this plan were, and some of them are even from a later period of time, like from the Frankfurt School, with their, they had the what was it, that they taught, the inclusion and equity and the DEI like stuff. They were promoting that kind of stuff. And they come from Frankfurt over there at some university over there in Frankfurt, Germany, and they call it the School of Thought of the Frankfurt School. And they come over here and they started spreading that, that ideology into the universities. Well, and even earlier, they began teaching stuff that, like Darwinism and the Age of Enlightenment, and pushing religion out, and the Bible and the teachings of the Bible, pushing it further and further out and easing in this. And so it's these early teachers, the ones that were, in league, that had been put in those positions, because they looked for these people. And they used stuff like these secret societies, like the Masons and others, to recruit people. Okay, you got a bunch of them that are just what you call your porch Masons. The ones that just go there because they think it's like cool to to have a fellowship, be a part of some kind of society or something. And so those people never really made aware of the true agenda. But they look for people, and they have ways of questioning them and just, watching them, how they are, how they act, and then they will bring them up through the ranks. And they especially like to get a hold of teachers and people who are business owners and people in the political arena, and use them to shape the next generation, to put these indoctrinations into them. And so these teachers and these professors and stuff that came here and they, or were here, and they began teaching in these universities, and they just began to slowly bring these ideologies in a little bit at a time. And so now you've shaped this generation here of teachers, your next generation of teachers. You've already put these ideas into their head. Now they take it a little bit further. They begin to add on to that indoctrination that they had indoctrinated into them. And so it just keeps multiplying, and they get more liberal, more off the deep end, more satanic, more demonic. It gets more and more demonic and satanic with each passing generation, because each passing generation adds more to it and makes it even more radical, and to where you're at now. I mean, really, that to the point where they've become so radicalized, these young people that go to universities have become so radicalized that we've, just about the only solution is to shut these universities down and start from scratch. Get rid of these people that have been indoctrinated for the last 100 years or so, and just start with a basic, as Dr. Turley says, a classical education, to where you're actually teaching them to think, not just to spout off a bunch of rhetoric, a bunch of sound bites. I mean, because again, no matter what the subject is, you can, try to have a debate with or a dialogue with these people and ask them, why do you believe that? Why is it that you believe that I'm, this fascist, or whatever they're accusing you of? And they cannot one of them give you an answer because they've never been taught to actually think for themselves. They've been indoctrinated. They've had a radical ideological indoctrination, pounded into them. And because, again, they've been taught that these people are the experts, they know everything, so if they tell you something, you got to believe it, even though that's not true. In fact, those people are just as deceived and just as indoctrinated as the people that they are indoctrinating. But if you confront them with that, they will not acknowledge it. They will, vehemently deny that they are thinking for themselves. Well, they're not. They are thinking what they were taught to think. And so that's why the Father, he tells us, he says, come, let us reason together. He tries to reason with us. Okay? But if your reasoning has been so twisted and so warped, like these young people that are dancing, dancing in the streets over this guy being murdered, that says something. That they are demonic. And a lot of the people that have affiliated themselves with the so-called left, the Democrats or whatever, they're leaving it in droves. I mean, they've talked about here in just the last few days, tens of thousands of people have left because of their disgust. They some people that are on that side of the aisle that, and don't get me wrong, I'm not, sitting here defending or making out the right to be so righteous or something. I'm not. But what I'm saying is that to me, this follows 2nd Esdras, where I talked about the eagle with 2 heads and one turn, 3 heads and one turning around and biting the left-handed heads off. And that's what I see happening here. I mean, I see this party is in its death throes and it's lashing out. I mean, that's what happens when something like a wild animal, lashes out when it's dying, I mean, you go to try to help it and it kicks you and bites you. And I mean, that's what you're seeing here. This eagle head, it's biting. And it's so that this final head, and that was, because if you read that whole thing there about the eagle, it starts out, it's got all these feathers and all these heads and all this stuff. And as time goes along, these feathers get plucked out. These are kingdoms and powers and stuff that get plucked out over time, and then all you're left with is these 3 heads. Well, that tells me that's the end of the story. All the more convincing that we're in the little season is that, this and it seems to follow that pattern. Because, I've talked about that in the last few videos I did about patterns, man. I mean, the more I read the scriptures, the more I see these patterns of events. And it's like a cycle, waves, cycles that just go on and on and on. And then you get to where we're at now. This is the final conclusion of it. But the way that the Father is reaching out to people is through the Ruach. He says that this time He's pouring His Ruach out upon all flesh. So people will be without excuse when they go before judgment. They're going to be without excuse because He has spoken to our conscience. Them people that you see like that dancing out there in the streets and celebrating a man being murdered, they have no conscience. Their conscience has been seared. So they don't hear the Ruach. Those are those who are destined to destruction. And except the Father, change them or correct them in some way, they are the sons and daughters of disobedience who are destined to destruction. And me and my friend talked about this too. The day of evangelization and going out in the whole world and preaching the gospel, that was during the time of Paul and them, up until the time of the tribulation. Then you had the millennial kingdom, and then you have now. And there's nothing about that now. Because if you listen to what the mainstream churches are saying, they're telling you these people over here in Israel over here, we got to defend them, and we got, no, we don't. If they deny and hate the true Messiah, why? Why are we supposed to be defending them? And they're looking for a false Messiah. And they even claim, our Messiah is your Antichrist. And I'm not encouraging you to read the Zohar or the Kabbalah or the Talmud or any of that stuff, but if you ever did read any of it, it's horrific what they think about us. We're like dogs to be used and abused and exploited in every possible way. Just telling you. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't hate those people, and I don't want bad for them. That's up to the Most High as to what He does with them. But, if you hate the Son of the Most High, then, I don't have no use for that. And I don't want to associate with that. And they're trying to get these Noahide laws and all that kind of stuff passed here in America in the Congress. The AIPAC. And of course, that's, might be one of the reasons why old Charlie was, there's probably more to it than meets the eye. There always is when it comes to that kind of stuff. If you look at the, Kennedy assassination, how they, done everything in the world to cover that up and to hide it, and kill anybody that was tied to it. Like Sirhan and Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby and all these people that were tied, they all ended up dead. Why? To tie off up all the loose ends. To the people that were really the ones that assassinated him. His own Secret Service and CIA. And then all you gotta do is do a little background on that and find out who they're tied in with. Not rocket science. But enough of my rant. I'm just, not only that, but that's over here in Germany. They have a political party over there that is mainly in the eastern part of Germany. It's called the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, that has just come from nowhere and is now the largest party over there. And the government in power, the CDC or the CDF or something like that, it's like 3 or 4 parties over there, 5 parties. There's the Greens, and then there's the Socialists, and then there's the Social Democrats, and they got a bunch of different parties. Well, they tried everything. You know, they even tried to outlaw them and stuff. You know, and the AFD as far right radicals. You know, and really it was made up of a lot of just normal everyday citizens, working class people and stuff like that right there. And really they should have ultimately, you know, had the chairmanship or whatever they call it over there, the prime minister or their leader or whatever. And but they didn't. And then in like less than 2 weeks, 7 of their people that were elected to the Bundestag or whatever, I think that's what it's called, their Congress or whatever, were killed or died under, you know, natural causes. Even though there was a statistician that come right out, you know, one of their own over there, and he said it is statistically impossible that these people died from natural causes, all from the same party, all elected officials in the government, all just died within less than 2 weeks. And of course, they, you know, the technology and all that stuff, they've had it. They've had the means of, you know, you can just reach down and grab your doorknob on your car and they can just take some stuff and just brush it on there or spray it on there. And all you do is go over and put your hand on it and it gets absorbed into your skin and you have a heart attack or a stroke. Yeah, it looks like natural causes. And the stuff is designed in such a way that it gets, you know, gets out of your system real quick. So even if they did a toxicology on you, it would be absorbed up and, you know, they wouldn't be able to find it. Whatever it was that they used to kill you. And so, you know, I mean, that just shows you the madness. And of course, that harkens back to Deuteronomy chapter 28. And it's, you know, people say, oh, that just pertains to Israel. No, it don't. It pertains to any nation. Any nation that, you know, that begins to worship other gods, that turn their back on the Most High, that began to do those things in there that it says for you not to do. Those things, those consequences of that will happen to you. He was just telling them, I mean, because it's sort of like a law, an unwritten law, that these are things, these are the results. If you do these things, these are the results of doing that. No matter who you are. Whether you were the ancient Hebrews or whether you were the Goyim. If you were doing this stuff, this is the final, you know, this is what it will ultimately lead to. And at the end of it, people become cannibals and start eating one another. And we've already seen evidence of that stuff already happening, been happening for decades. I mean, you know, you take like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, that was based off of a real event. And then Jeffrey Dahmer and people like that. I mean, you hear about that kind of stuff all the time. That's what ultimately will happen to a nation who rejects the true Creator and goes after the false gods. And of course, the whole world's been deceived. I mean, we all have. But for some of us who are listening and being, you know, listening to the Ruach, because there is things like on YouTube and stuff that is truth. That there is truth in it. And if the Ruach points you to something, check it out. Listen, you're going to find something that you just didn't know. I mean, that's what happened to me with the flat earth thing. And that guy that I got that from, Rob Skiba, he's dead. They killed him. Because he was reaching a lot of people. I mean, not just here in the United States, he was going all over the world teaching about the flat earth. And other things. And so, excuse me. And so, that's what's, when somebody reaches a point to where they're actually making a difference and people are beginning to listen to them and beginning to wake up, they don't stay around too long. And so, I do my little thing here, but nobody listens to me. I'm not really anybody that's that charismatic. I just don't have that kind of, attraction or draw or whatever, or it's being suppressed. I don't know. Maybe both. They of course they're going to try to suppress people that could potentially reach a lot of people and maybe start getting people to wake up. But what I'm telling people is I'm not going to preach the gospel or nothing else to you. I'm just going to tell you to listen. Listen to what the Ruach is saying. If you feel, calm your mind, clear your mind of all of the worldly distractions and just listen. Not meditate and zone out. No, just listen. Just listen. And he'll speak to your conscience. And, because the days of, the time of trying to win people over with the gospel and all that stuff, that's over. That happened back then. That's over. Now, people, the only way that their minds can be changed is not by what me and you say, because I've tried it, man, and it don't make a difference to people. Yeah, I know. That's because they do know. Because he puts it into our conscience to know. But we have to choose to act upon it. And that's why, that's where it talks about casting your pearls before swine. Why waste your time trying to, to tell somebody about something and they ain't going to hear it? They don't want to hear it. And except that he draw you, you can't come to Yahushua. You can't. He does it. He does it all. And people today, if they don't know the truth, when like David said in the Psalms, the heaven declares your glory and the firmament showeth forth your handiwork. The whole of creation declares him. To anybody who is watching and listening. But for those who are caught up in the world and the things of the world and distracted by the things of the world, they're not going to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They want to be free from that. And so why would you waste your time on those people? Charlie Kirk, that's what he was doing. He's trying to reach these young people. But and they just vehemently, every now and again he'd reach one of them, that somehow or another they got broke out of the matrix. The Father wanted them and they heard what he had to say. And they, got out of that university, got out of that mentality. But the majority of them, they just went right back. They come there to debate him, and to holler at him and call him a fascist and, and all that kind of stuff. But yet he continued, he continued to pursue his passion for it. I mean, I don't know the man's heart. I believe he was a good man. And he loved his family, and and I believe he cared about those people he was trying to tell the truth. But, and of course it took something like that, basically martyrdom, to wake a lot of these people that were kind of in the zone, in the twilight zone kind of thing. I mean, it shocked them when they saw the response of their co-democrats or whatever. They realized that they in a party that is nothing but pure evil. And of course, I mean, the right's no different. I've talked about the right-hand path and the left-hand path. They're both the world. That's why the scripture says don't turn to the right hand or the left hand. Stay on that straight and narrow, that middle, right up the middle, right up the straight and narrow. Don't go to either side. Because, I mean, this, even if the left-hand side gets crushed, gets its head bitten off, and it ceases, now you're going to have this one big party, uniparty, that has all of the different ideologies and different beliefs and different stuff all in one. And that can't be good. Especially if they're, the God they believe in is not the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Creator. And it's not. And neither is their Messiah. They're going to go after the same false Messiah that, is our Antichrist or whatever. They'll fall right into it. And of course, I've talked about that the Antichrist has been around since the beginning. That spirit of Antichrist, that's the spirit of Lucifer. And it continues to emerge at different points when people are ready for it. It pops up. It was in Nero. Then it will be in whoever now, another Antichrist figure, whoever it is. And who's to say that not only that, but I mean, that we might not even see that, these entities return down here. Because it talks about that too. People's hearts failing them for fear of looking after those things which are coming upon the earth. I mean, is it talking about, these aliens, and of course all these people now, that they know, they're coming out, telling it. They're not aliens, they're demons, or they're fallen angels, they're not. Well, they are. They're fallen angels. They're demonic or satanic. They're one of the two. And when it comes down to where we're right there before, fire comes down out of heaven and burns them up, they may show up down here to try to lead the final battle or whatever. I don't know. I mean, that very well could happen. But, the only thing I can tell anybody is, and I've told you this, don't believe what I tell you. Study your scriptures. Pray. And listen. Because he's speaking, but most people are not hearing. And then he will lead you to the truth. The Ruach will. He will lead you to all truth. But you got to be listening. You got to hear what he's saying. You got to have your moments of silence where you just, where he says, be still and know that I am Elohim. Be still be quiet and listen. And he will reveal the truth to you. He'll lead you to it. And so I'm going to kind of end it there. I kind of blathered on enough, but, kind of covered a lot of all the stuff that's going on. And of course, I've gone over this kind of ad nauseum about the source of all this. And of course, I'm sure most of you folks that have been watching me and listening to me, you probably, as you look around the world and you see the things that are going on and all, you probably coming to the same kind of conclusion. Because it's not like I've got a lock on this or nothing. I mean, there's a lot of people that have come to this conclusion. And I think more and more will. And that's why you see things kind of speeding up. It seems like, like the days, like last month, it just went, and here if I live, 3 weeks, I'll be 63. It just seems like I just turned 62. And, the years are going by, and then, I was talking about on here before, that this rain, cloudy. Well, for last month, we ain't had more than a sprinkle of rain, and it's been clear every day. I do still see the plains every now and again, but I think they're putting desiccants out, drying it out. We're really extremely dry. And I'm like, well, they're going to burn us out of here. They're going to let it get really dried out. They come through and wetted it with them chemicals and all that stuff for 6 months. Now they're just drying it out, getting it really dry, and then hit us with a couple of lasers or whatever and get it going. Just burn us out. Is that what's coming? I don't know, but I know, and looking at the weather report thing, the extended forecast, it's going to be like that for the next 2 weeks. Don't get me wrong, I love sunshine, love seeing the sun and all, and it's been pretty moderate temperatures, 70s and 80s. I'm not complaining about that, but it does concern me about the dry, and the water of the river is dropping. And, I don't know how the lake is up there, at the reservoir or whatever, but, well, excuse me. But that's kind of, where we're at here. I don't know about anywhere else, but, it has its benefits. You can get outside and do stuff, and not burn up, or, not be soaking rain and, tracking mud and all that. But, at the same time, it's concerning, if the fire did start, it could be devastating. Because there's nothing but woods and forest around here. And so, I hope and pray nothing like that happens. But, with these people, this demonic spirit, satanic spirit, who knows? I'm pretty sure that's what happened in Maui and there in Southern California, the Palisades and all down there. So I'm sure that's exactly what happened there. That was deliberate. They wanted them people out of there, out of that area there, the Palisades, and they wanted to turn that into these little box apartments or whatever they want to put everybody in, move everybody into these cities. And the same over there in Hawaii, they wanted that for the elite. They want that. So, and the other one other thing I just mentioned, but I think it's in Wyoming or somewhere. they keep hearing, these people keep reporting hearing these explosions coming out of the ground. And they was told to keep your mouth shut and be quiet. Sounds to me like they're probably building some of those deep underground military bases, or those DUMBs, as they call them, bunkers or whatever, because they think they're going to be able to hide. They think they're going to, and that's going to be their grave. You know, but that kind of stuff going on. I mean, I've heard stories. I mean, you know, again, you know, who knows what that you can really believe, but you know, I've heard about, you know, people like in Missouri and places like that, you know, I mean, just regular old people, you know, coming and saying, man, you know, we've been hearing these, you know, explosions underground, and somewhere else they was hearing them at Iowa or Nebraska or somewhere. I mean, hearing them underground. We've been hearing these booms, you know, and we don't really know where they're coming from. Sounds like it's coming from the ground. And then up there in Canada somewhere one time, I heard them where they said they was hearing like these machines, you know, it sounded like machines under, you know, tunneling machines or something, I guess, underground. And with the deep fakes and all that kind of stuff that they can do now, they could make it look like they're all still out functioning and doing everything, and really they all underground in these bunkers just waiting to push the button and try and annihilate a bunch of us, you know, I mean, the ones they want to get rid of. And some of these places, I mean, at least some of these so-called whistleblowers said that there's some down there that's big enough to hold hundreds of thousands of people, you know, and I'm sure they've got their list of the people that they want to take with them, that they'll need to start civilization over again or whatever. I don't know if it's true or not, but I know there is a lot of these, you know, tunnel systems. You can see the entrances, see trucks going in, big, you know, trucks full of food and stuff like that, supplies going down in there. Over there in Missouri, there's one, they talk like that, you know, there's 500 trucks a day going in and out of there. I don't know. But anyhow, I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to end it here. Just some things to think about, but the main thing I want you to do is clear, you know, just get somewhere in your closet, your secret closet, and clear all the junk out of your mind, and just focus on Yahushua and listen, and you'll hear from him. You know, you just focus your mind on him. And also, those whose mind is stayed on thee, he will keep in perfect peace. And I'll leave you with that. And I hope all of you will be blessed. I love you. I thank you for watching the videos and stuff. You know, if you want to subscribe or whatever, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. I'm not here about that. And so I'll see you again on the next Shabbat. If nothing else, any kind of event happens or whatever. I mean, I can't, I'm to the point where I just don't even, I'm not going to say I'm going to be here for sure, but if Yahweh was willing, I'll be here. I hope all of you will have a blessed and prosperous week. See you.